All right, so you guys send us some really fascinating stuff, and this week has been no exception. You've been sending in a lot about this Mahmoud Khalil case, and
Yeah.
it's really got everybody thinking about, like, what does it really mean to be a legal permanent resident in the U.S. today?
Yeah, it really throws into question this whole idea of,
Oh, shit.
permanent residency and what that means for the rights of folks who have, built their lives here.
Right, like the assumption has always been green card, yeah, you can't vote in most cases, but
Right.
other than that, you've gained pretty much the same rights as a citizen.
Right.
So what's going on here?
Well, the news that you've been sharing with us, we've got these articles from the Atlantic and the New York Times laying it out,
Huh.
and it's about this Mahmoud Khalil. He's a Palestinian activist. He was a student at Columbia University,
Mhm.
and he's a legal permanent resident. And here's the thing, he hasn't been charged with a crime.
Right, and that seems to be what's really throwing people for a loop. Like,
Absolutely.
so what makes this so unique? What makes his situation so noteworthy?
Well, it's really raising questions about what we thought we knew about, how these things worked. And, as these articles detail, Khalil was arrested by ICE agents, and not just any ICE agents. These were agents from the Homeland Security Investigations Division.
Okay, and so that's a little different.
That's a little different. Usually they're dealing with, like drug trafficking or terrorism,
Yeah.
serious international crime.
Like, that's a whole other level, right?
Exactly. And another interesting thing is the timing of the arrest.
Okay.
It happened just one day after the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio,
Oh, wow.
sent this letter to DHS.
So, like, was he the one that, like,
Well, according to the Atlantic, Rubio's letter actually named two people
oh,
for
wow.
potential deportation, and Khalil was one of them.
Wow.
And a DHS official even said there may be more to come.
Wow. So this isn't just like a random one-off kind of thing.
Doesn't look like it.
So you've got all these legal experts in the Atlantic article saying, they're just astonished that someone with a green card could be arrested and
Yeah.
possibly deported just for protesting without any criminal charges.
Right.
And then you've got Trump weighing in on social media saying, this is just the first of many.
It's concerning. Yeah.
So what's the legal basis for all this?
Well, the normal process, as we understand it, for deporting someone with a green card is that they have to commit a serious crime, and then an immigration judge can
Right.
revoke their status.
Right.
But that hasn't happened here. Khalil hasn't been charged with anything.
They're going about this a totally different way.
Yeah, they're using this very unusual authority that's buried in the Immigration and Nationality Act.
Okay, so break that down for me. What is this authority? What are they talking about?
Well, it basically says that the Secretary of State can decide that an immigrant's presence here
Okay.
has what they call potentially serious adverse foreign policy consequences.
So, like, how do they even, like, is that,
Well, in this case,
like, how do they measure that, right?
right, in this case, it was Rubio who made that determination
Right.
and sent that letter to DHS, and that's what kicked off this whole process against Khalil.
So essentially they're saying his presence here is bad for foreign policy,
That's the argument?
even though he hasn't broken any laws.
Right, and it's really different from how things have been done in the past.
And you're saying that this is like an extremely rare thing for them to do?
This specific clause, yeah, especially for something like political speech.
Right, like, if he was a known terrorist or something.
Right, if there were national security concerns.
But this is just like, he's saying stuff they don't like.
And it's really raising questions about how far this could go. Who else could they target using this justification?
And so it's interesting, they had that NPR interview with Troy Edgar, who's the DHS deputy secretary, and even he seemed to struggle
Oh, really?
to explain why Khalil was being targeted.
Mhm.
And when they asked him what laws Khalil had broken specifically,
Yeah.
he couldn't really give him a straight answer.
He kind of just vaguely said that you could see it on TV referring to Khalil's activism.
Like, so they're just like, we don't like what he's saying, basically.
That seems to be the gist of it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what exactly are they saying he did?
Well, the administration is arguing that Khalil's criticism of Israel at Columbia was fueling anti-Semitism,
Okay.
and that he was aligning himself with terrorism. But it's important to note they haven't actually accused him of having any direct contact with Hamas.
Oh, so they're not saying he's like
Right.
working with them or getting instructions from them or anything.
So we're not going that far.
So it's all about, like, what he was saying.
Yes, and how that might have influenced others.
Okay.
And this obviously raises all sorts of First Amendment issues.
Right.
Can the government really deport someone for expressing their political views?
Right. And it's like the classic slippery slope argument, right?
Exactly. Where does it end? If you can deport someone for criticizing Israel, what's next?
Right. And the administration is saying that, Khalil and some other protesters were threatening and intimidating Jewish students. But again, they don't give any specific examples.
Right. There's no evidence presented of any actual threats or intimidation.
So it's just like a blanket accusation.
And it appears that way.
And it's really interesting to look at what happened at Trump Tower.
Right.
Because there was this whole protest organized by a Jewish group, a progressive Jewish group, in support of Khalil.
And they specifically pushed back against this idea that Colombia was a hotbed of anti-Semitism.
Right. And they actually accused the administration of weaponizing anti-Semitism.
Yeah, using it as a tool to silence dissent.
Right. And they even had 98 protesters arrested at Trump Tower.
Which really shows how heated this issue has become.
And the New York Times article quotes some of these protesters, like Jane Hirschman,
right,
who is a descendant of Holocaust survivors.
Yeah.
And she compared Khalil's arrest to, like, the tactics of authoritarian regimes.
And you also have James Scamus,
right,
a Jewish professor at Columbia, who said pretty much the same thing.
So you've got people who are really seeing this as a threat to free speech.
Absolutely.
And a dangerous precedent.
Definitely.
So where does this leave Khalil legally? Like, what's happening with his case?
Well, first of all, there were all these errors in the ICE charging document.
Oh, really? Like, what kind of errors?
Well, they got his place and date of entry into the U.S. wrong.
Oh, wow.
And they even cited the wrong legal statute for his permanent resident status.
So, like, are they just trying to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks?
It does make you wonder.
So what are his lawyers saying?
Well, one of his attorneys, Andrew Rankin, said the whole document was very unprofessional.
Yeah, that doesn't sound good.
No, it doesn't. And it could really hurt the government's case.
So what's the status right now?
Well, a judge in New York has temporarily blocked his deportation.
Oh, that's good.
Which is a big win for Khalil.
Yeah.
But he's still being held in Louisiana, where they transferred him after his arrest.
And is he going to get sent back to New York?
Well, the judge hasn't ordered that yet.
Oh.
But his immigration court hearing is set for March 27th in Louisiana.
Okay.
And that's significant because it means his case will be heard by the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals.
And so what does that mean?
Well, that court is known for being pretty conservative on immigration issues.
So it could be tough for him.
Yeah, it's definitely not in his favor.
So what are his lawyers arguing?
Well, their main argument is that he's being punished for protesting.
Right.
Which is protected by the First Amendment.
Yeah.
They're trying to get him back to New York and released.
Okay.
And they're saying that this whole thing is a violation of his rights.
And do they have a chance?
Well, one immigration lawyer, Ira Kurzban, called this a test case.
Oh, wow.
He said there's nothing really like it in recent history.
So this could set a precedent.
Absolutely. It could have huge implications for other green card holders.
So this isn't just about Khalil?
No, it's about a much bigger picture.
Right. It's about what kind of rights permanent residents have in this country.
Exactly. And it seems to be part of a larger trend under the Trump administration.
They've been talking about cracking down on immigration.
Exactly. The Atlantic explicitly links Khalil's case to this broader crackdown on immigration.
And Trump has said he wants to speed up deportations.
Right. He's been really frustrated with the pace of deportation.
Yeah. And they're even considering using this really old law, the Alien Enemies Act,
Oh, wow.
to target certain groups.
Yeah, that's a pretty extreme measure.
Yeah. It usually only comes up in times of war.
Right. So it really shows how serious they are about this.
Wow. So what does this all mean for our listeners?
Well, I think the big takeaway here is that things are changing.
Yeah.
For a long time, permanent residents have felt pretty secure in their rights.
Right.
But this case suggests that that might not be the case anymore.
It seems like the rules are being rewritten.
Exactly. And that's something that every green card holder needs to be aware of.
It's really about how welcome are you?
Right. Like, are you really welcome here? Or can you be kicked out just because someone in power doesn't like what you're saying?
Yeah. And what does it mean for the idea of permanent residency?
Right. If it's not so permanent anymore.
If it can be taken away just because of your political views?
Right.
It's a really unsettling thought.
Definitely something to think about.
All right. Well, thanks for breaking that down for us.
Yeah.
And for everyone listening, thanks for sending in all the information on this case.
Yeah.
Keep those tips coming. And we'll see you next time for another deep dive.